sure we eat your eggs and everything else, though.
What? Yeah, I know, right? Kev, you could start if you want.
Yeah.
The guy grabbing some food and then they're just gonna sit down,
Okay.
but they can hear.
Good. Well, good morning. I see we have Michael and Yaakov and Asher. What was your name?
Jackal.
Yaakov also. Yechiel, a couple of the guys. Pleasure to meet you guys. And so the idea of today was kind of doing education for people that have any interest in just financial health, wellness, whatever. So I figured, I don't know why anyone's here. I have a presentation that is very broad, but everyone has different backgrounds and different experiences and everything else. I figured I would take a poll real quick to see what the interest was. And if I have to pull the presentation up, it'd be great, but it might be boring for some people, right? Everyone's been in school and I don't think anyone really liked it very much, right? So if you want to go around the room real quick and tell me, or online, just feel free to start speaking. Let me know what prompted you guys to join. And I'm happy, or any questions, I'm happy to try to steer the conversation that way, instead of pulling up a presentation and speaking for an hour. That sound good to you guys?
Sounds great.
Okay.
I can start.
Osher, go. Go ahead.
So, the
Like, well, let's talk about why you came, what questions you may have, and that'd be great. Yeah.
So the reason I came is because I heard about it from Adam, who told me, hey, this thing's going on. I'll go. That's why I went. And
Who's Adam?
this Adam.
Adam. Oh, nice to meet you.
Boom. And the reason that I came essentially is because the government steals money from you left and right, and I'm trying to limit the amount that they steal in a legal way. For that end, I have an F corp, and I'm trying to figure out how to utilize that to the maximum, let's say, to
Okay.
keep whatever I have.
So a healthy distrust of the government.
I mean, I feel like everyone should go through life with a healthy.
My father's from Venezuela, so yeah, all my family's cheering on.
You know.
Yeah, all my cousins, I have a cousin chat with like 40 people, everyone is doing backflips. What it means for the international status of the world is a different question, but right now everyone's very exuberant. So yeah. Michael, Yaakov online, any specific reason?
Just listening to what you have to say.
Okay.
Same here. I never say no. I never say no to a free resource.
Okay, good. Adam, thank you for being on. Sure, it's a good guy. Yeah. What was the reason for you joining?
I would probably say same free resource, but just interested in what you have to say. I always like to learn.
Okay.
Nothing specific.
Okay. All right. So that's the case. Then what we can do is let's start with some really basic stuff, right? Oh, we have someone else just joined. Yaakov. Yaakov, pleasure to meet you.
Also, if I could just add one.
Yeah.
My kid is a year and a half, and I want to make everything possible to give to him. So I'm just wondering, what funds or IRAs or whatever.
Okay. All right. So, because everyone's kind of looking more for resource stuff, then what we'll do is, Yechiel,
Yeah.
you have the presentation then? I might just start going through that.
Yes. You sent me the presentation, right?
Yeah, I emailed it to you.
Okay.
So let's just start by doing this. So the reality is, if it's on the computer here, can you bring it up? Yeah. The reality is, information is great. We live in a world of information, but in my opinion, most people haven't been dumber on some level, right? Where we think people thought the internet would change the world, and the reality, people aren't very different. So what it comes down to in anything you do, especially in finance, everything's kind of similar. It's about what actions you take, right? And you got to find someone who speaks to you, whether it's a mentor, whether it's someone on YouTube or something, someone who's going to help you take action, whatever you're going to be doing. So we can talk and talk and talk about stuff. There is no one way to do anything. I'm going to share with you some concepts I think that works for me and for our clients and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what ends up happening is you need to just take action on something.
Okay.
And yeah, sure, go.
What's your background?
Yeah, I was gonna tell you, yeah, good, yeah. So, first and foremost, my name is Kevin Milgram. I'm a certified financial planner, which means I took a test and I have certifications. And the reality is
That's different from a CFA. Correct?
very different, yeah, very different. A CFA is someone who is certified to work internationally, to work for hedge funds, mutual funds, and investment companies to analyze companies. That guy can work in Indonesia, can work in Dubai, can work in Miami. Me as a CFP, I'm a certified financial planner, which means I specialize in personal finance, personal business planning, estate planning, investment planning, all for the individual and for the family. The CFA won't know personal tax stuff like Asher's asking, right?
Sure.
But they can tell you if you should buy NVIDIA 10 years ago, hopefully, or something like that, right? So, you ready to share? Okay.
Yep, I'm gonna share it in a second.
So I'm going to walk you through this. I'm going to go through this pretty fast because I think this is really pretty broad. But what I'm getting at is I'm hoping when you do something like this, if you can get one piece of information that you can take away from, and if you get two, it's usually a success, right? And if you take that piece of information and actually put it into action, it's a massive success. And it can be anything from savings to asking different questions and whatever not, and different things, right? So.
Hoodles. Hoodles. One
Good morning.
second. We are going to share the screen.
I'll just share it actually in the middle.
Oh, this right here?
Yeah, there you go. No, I hate the good degree. Here, there you go.
That's it?
No, I didn't do it.
Yeah, the screen is touchy. And how do you?
Oh, I gotta minimize or share the presentation.
There you go. Hang on.
There you go.
There we go. Let's open this up.
Okay, so
The whole thing is touch.
yeah, I got it. Awesome.
You can pull it forward for if you want.
Yeah. I didn't see my face too much, but this one. All right.
There you go.
So basically, we're gonna walk through this presentation a little bit. Move this over.
We can shrink this.
Yeah. Gotta minimize this though. There we go. Can you let me see? Yeah. My downloads, I can open it. You have PowerPoint here or no?
I open the Google Slides in the middle and come to your help them really quickly. You click in the middle, it says open Google Slides.
Okay, yeah.
And then we'll open this.
We won't actually run it because it PowerPoint.
No, but it should work though.
There we go.
Oh,
Okay, so here's thank you. So the agenda basically need for financial planning. At the end of the day, though, what I'm talking about is hopefully you guys get some pieces. This is very, very broad, so stop me. All right, it might be basic stuff for some of you guys, but let's just talk a little bit and see. In financial planning, basically, and first and foremost, just creating priorities. I'm a big believer in saying no to stuff. I love saying no to stuff. Why? Because it helps me focus on things. It takes away the noise. And back to the comment earlier about information, you can go online for hours and learn about a bunch of stuff. But if nothing happens afterwards, it's a serious problem, right? So I love saying no to investments, to things to do with people, because it focuses on things most important to me. Whether it's family, work, or things like this, even, right? Giving a backflip and talking to people. We're talking about making a budget, which is a fuller word. If you guys have credit card debt or not, we can talk about that, becoming an investor, and then taking advantage of any plans you may have, right? So this is a little funky. There we go. So a 5-step process in creating a budget and doing everything else, you know what you're working for. Like Asha mentioned a question a second ago about his kid, right? That may be the most important thing in his life. And a lot of parents do things for their kids and not prioritize themselves. That's everyone's choice. Some people say, hey, my kid will be fine, and I work by myself first, retirement and everything else. Depends on what your priorities. You have to write these things down. What are you working so darn hard for? Or what are you working and spending all this time to do different things? So write what's most important to you. It might be buying a house, maybe moving, maybe changing a career, maybe education for your kids. If you write these things down, it goes back to my earlier comment about saying no to stuff. If you know exactly what you're focused on, you can get rid of all the noise that takes you away from that focus, right? And you go back to the priorities. If you're married, or if you're dating someone or living with somebody, if you don't have that conversation with your partner, you're missing half the boat. Because you may decide to do something that your partner or your wife may say, hey, that doesn't make any sense to me. Then you're both working in different directions, and you got a serious problem. So the biggest takeaway here is write the things most important to you. You want to accomplish financially, whatever it is, and talk to your spouse about it. Make sure you're on the same page and come to a plan together in doing those things, right? Know your income. You got to know what's coming in before you know what's coming out, right? Expenses. Who here actually has a budget? Who's actually written a budget for themselves? Okay, anybody else? Credit card, the bill comes in, you pay it. That's the budget. All right. So it used to be, and I'll be 50 next year. It used to be before credit cards are so prevalent. It used to be, and you know, people are my age, a little bit older. You'd open your bank account, you know, a certain amount of money in there, and if you went through it, the month was over, right? You know, you were living on ramen, you weren't buying meat that week, you weren't seeing a movie, and you had to make it last the entire month. Then financial companies, talking about who's screwing you, the government's not the only one, by the way. Financial companies also.
3 weeks speech on.
Yeah, absolutely. So what ends up happening is they realize, oh, people will overspend and we can make more money. And then you swipe a credit card, and Amazon's taking advantage of it. And what ends up happening, everyone gets their credit card bill. What do you say? What did I spend that on? You look at the boxes in the garage of all the Amazon stuff. What did I buy? What's going on? That's people's budget nowadays, right? I'm talking to everybody. I'm talking if you go to my house also, there's boxes up front. I don't know what's going on. So what ends up happening is it used to be very easy to not overspend. I'm not saying people live better. They live just as difficultly. But overspending is a big deal. So a budget ends up being what you're willing to do and not willing to do, right? That's why number 4 is so important. Create realistic budgets. You know, in today's day and age, things are easy. Living the Joneses and different things, the Schwartzes, whatever you want to call it. You know, comparing stuff to people, it's very difficult to do. One thing, a real rule of thumb is if you do this as early as possible, if you start by putting 10% of your income away as early as possible, all right, 20s or 30s, you usually have a really good head start if you retire at 65 or 70 or something. So if you went back to your budget and said, hey, I can't control this over here, but I can control how much I take out of my bank account every single month, right? Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Especially at the rate nowadays where the inflation is just out of hand, just going insane. Wouldn't it make more sense to take less liquid out of your budget for savings and more liquid out of your budget to invest so that you can
Same.
how the because if you
So-
have where I'm coming from, if you have $20 in the bank account, that is subject to whatever inflation and all that stuff. If you have $20 in investments and all that, then usually they can go up or down with the inflation.
So it's a good question. I'm talking about investments right now, but you're talking about liquidity. So generally speaking, you want to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in cash. So you generally don't want to invest until you have that, unless you're really okay with taking risk. Now, if you're securing your job and things are going well, some people will have less in their bank account because they want to put that money to work. They have FOMO or whatever it may be, or they want it to work as effective as possible. But generally speaking, you want someone to have at least, if you're working by yourself, 3 months, you can probably figure things out. If you have a family and only one spouse is working, it's 6 months. If they're both working, you do 3 months. That's kind of the gauge. Once you have that money saved, so that 10% goes there first, you build it up, or hopefully it comes in sooner. Then once that's saved, you have your emergency fund. So if your car goes out, or if a hurricane comes, deductible, or you have a big health event or something, or you have an opportunity to invest in something, you have cash someplace. That cash fund is there for that slush fund. Once you have that established, then you can start putting money and putting things you're talking about. Get an index fund, go to Robinhood, whatever it may be, and put it to work someplace, basically.
But you're saying first you should have the 3 to 6.
Basics of financial planning, yeah. Most people don't. Most people don't. They don't have the discipline to do so, right? So maybe you skip that step because you can't get there and do here. There's a risk to doing that. What's the risk? If you have a big event come up and the market's down, or you can't put it because it's an IRA, and you get taxed and penalized up the wazoo, there's a problem with that, right? But that's a risk everyone has to choose on their own, right? But if you start with that first cash situation, you really put you in a great spot, you know?
And you only lose out on a couple months of investing anyway. I mean, ostensibly you would have enough.
Yeah, yeah. And nowadays, what's interesting nowadays, listen, I've been doing this for 20, back to your question earlier, real quick. I started doing this in 2000. All right. I'll be 50 next year, 26 years, personal financial planning. I run a division in a firm that runs fee-based planning. So people pay me for their advice, right? So I become personal CFO. I get paid per money just to run their entire financial life, whether it's the bank accounts, their kids, their grandkids, their businesses. So I shuffle all these shells around for everyone to come to place, right? But in doing that, you have to manage your own risk, right? 5 years ago, if you put money into a CD or you put money in a money market, guess what you're earning? Any guess? Less than one. COVID and their interest rates were the first time in the last 10 or 15 years that people can put money into cash and not really lose.
That's the question.
Right? Even in 2010, 2015, when rates were down 20, I was still letting people put money in cash because the liquidity of it's a big deal, right? Sometimes getting access to your cash. You know, in 2008, when the market went down, everyone lost value in their home and they couldn't access anything. If they had no cash, the market was down also, they were really up of a problem, right? So you are losing, but it's a small chunk, to your point. It'd be okay with doing that. And I had clients holding millions of dollars at 1%, 2%, telling me I was crazy until '08 happened, until 22 happened. And they're, oh, now I see why we're doing it. They missed out on it, but the flip side is a bigger loss potentially, right? But you start with there and you invest for the long term. And you basically have three buckets, right? You have the short-term stuff, right? Which is the 3 to 6 months emergency funds. You have the middle stuff, which is something under 3 years, and you have the long-term stuff past 5 years. And you kind of want to goal and prioritize things that way, right? If your goal is to buy a house in 2 or 3 years, you're not going to put it in the market so quickly, right? Because the market can be down at any point in time.
And putting it in the market with a plan of, okay, I'm not doing anything with this anyway. I'm not going to access it for 4 to 5 years
Or longer.
or longer. And put it in the market. It's going to work also. And then at least I'm not going to lose as much as if I only had it in my bank account when I do pull it out to use on a house where that's wrong.
Basically, you have no choice, right? So inflation wasn't a problem until about 12 or 18 months ago, right? Prior to that, what was inflation? Prior to that, do you know what it was? Prior to 2 years ago, what was inflation? The inflation rate.
I think around 3.
That's historical. That's the last 60 years. Under 2%.
Really.
My point is that you're living in times now, and it feels like, and this is very common. It's not just you, by the way.
Right.
You're living in times now, and if you look at the historical numbers, you look at people, ask people who have Social Security, up until now, when was the last time they had an increase in Social Security? Social Security goes up what's called CPI, Consumer Price Index, which is basically an inflation factor. They got no increases for 5 or 10 years. It's the best measure we have.
But just picking a random box of whatever they have to say.
It's constantly changing. They update it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. Economists do for a decent job. They do the best job they can. You're right. You know, on some level, they're throwing a dart against, trying to figure things out. But at the end of the day, they're still doing the best they can. And economy math is actually weird. They look backwards. They have to try to figure things out, what happened in the past, and hopefully what happened in the past happens in the future, which is a little bit funky, but it's the best action you have. And you do it also with history, right? What's the common thing now? What's going to happen next? Read a history book.
Yeah, I'm gonna fight with the random country that can do anything, and we're gonna overinflate all the dollars, and then
It's already happened 50 times over 30 different countries over the last 100 years. So the idea is that they do the best guess they have. You can't control that stuff.
right.
Okay, you can't control any of those things, right? What you can control basically ends up being what your actions are. So inflation is a recent event that's repeating itself. right? Before that, inflation was very, very, very low. I can't say where inflation is going to be. Neither can the Fed, by the way, or anyone else. But you kind of basically try to figure out where you're going in. But when you're personal planning, basically, if you start with those basic things, right? It goes back to like nutrition. If you work out, eat healthy, and you stretch, and you see call your mother every so often, your life is really, really good, right? Those are the four basic things, right? In finance, it's the same thing. You watch your spending, you put money in cash, you invest for the long term, and do your best not to overspend, right? If you start with that 10% rule, it's a good beginning. And the earlier you start that, the better chance you have. Now, if you have a really big lifestyle, then it may not be enough for you, but it's a good starting point at a minimum, right? Any questions from Zoom land by chance, brother, so far or no? No? Okay.
We're good so far. Thank you.
Yeah. By all means, if you guys just pipe up because people are here. So, and the biggest thing also is 5 is revisiting your goals and expenses. You have to review these things. One thing that I find that no one ever talks about these things is what income you're earning and how to improve that. Okay, God willing, everyone's income should increase. And if you don't see it increasing over time, you have to have a serious assessment of what you're doing and where you're working. Okay, because Osher's point, inflation is real. Maybe it's more real now than it was 5 years ago, but it is going to go up. Okay, you're going to have more kids, you're going to have more houses, more cars go up, everything goes up. So one thing that no one ever talks about in these talks is also personal growth and development professionally. So you have to be in a position where you're constantly looking to make improvements on yourself and your income, right? And if you want to talk separately about that, we can talk separately. But if that isn't in your wheelhouse, then you're missing half the boat. All right. Unless you're so frugal, and they hear those stories about these janitors that become millionaires because they ate pasta and a can of tuna a month, right? It happens, but those guys spent nothing, right? And they just controlled it, but didn't have that development and growth and professionally. That's a really big deal. All right. Let me see. Define your goals. Let me see. I can jump past these things.
Is there any way we can get access to this live?
Yeah, this doesn't really fit everything we're talking about because it's really, but
Just a quick question.
The answer is yeah.
Your had pointed out before.
Can you guys hear these questions, by the way? I'll repeat them if you can't hear them. So,
Yeah,
can you please repeat them?
yeah. Huh?
Having trust in the US government, what if you don't trust the dollar in 30 years from now?
Okay. So the question is if you don't trust the dollar in 30 years from now.
Are you investing in multiple currencies or you're sticking just to the American?
So it's a good question. So the question is if you don't have faith in the dollar in 30 years, do you invest in differently? The answer is you could. The problem is it's economies of scale on some level. What's that mean? It means that some people don't have the ability to buy their things, right? I mean, what other currency are you going to buy though? Right? I mean, do you want to buy the lira? You want to buy a euro? Want to buy a shekel? I don't know what the answer is. The peso. So gold is very interesting. Gold is gone up in value, but you can't walk into a store and use it to buy anything, right? And
It's a good store of value.
So it's
Better than anything else.
it could be. I mean, but it's hard. And gold has appreciated. I guess recently it's gone. Remember, people are afraid gold goes up. I don't know the recent numbers and what gold has gone up relative, let's say, to the S&P 500 or the stock market. I think it's done pretty darn well, actually, right? The challenge is it's hard to convert gold effectively into anything other than gold into cash sometimes, right? You're not going to put all your money in gold, right? I mean, you can have, for all I know, someone has a closet full of gold. Well, you carried a gold bar before? You ever actually held the gold bar? 10 gold bars? We had a widow come in, and her husband had like 25 or 30 gold bars, like not full gold bars, but the smaller ones. Those things are heavy, right? It came in her trunk, and her trunk was a little bit lower. It was not easy, and she had to find places to sell it. And to get a good value for it, right? Getting a dollar, what you're buying for it versus what you're selling it for, are always two different things, unless you hold it for 20 years.
What about
Right.
these online, like monetary metals or something?
You could buy the stock market like gold.
You can. You're buying ETFs that invest it, but they don't usually always buy gold. They're not actually holding the physical metal. What they're buying is futures, and they're buying things that are based on the price of it. And they also can't go out and do it. I know a guy, wealthy guy in Miami Beach. He had a lot of gold, and he actually paid some company who held his gold in a electronic safe. And it was someplace in the Northeast, and every so often he'd go visit his gold. And he'd go and then the electric arm would come out, it would come out and it would take out his gold, and he'd go see it and stuff and touch it like a Scrooge McDuck, you know.
My
So
question is more like they have those exchanges like monetary metals and stuff where the precious metals that you buy are actually held and then put in your
Yeah.
say Kevin's box or put on the side for you.
I mean, I'm not.
Company trades with that, and then they give you a certain return on it.
So the reality, I'm not so familiar with those. I can answer a question on that specifically. What I can tell you is that no different than diamonds, gold, silver, all these different things, platinum, whatever it may be, copper, different things. It's hard to convert them sometimes into something, right? A lot of people have value in their homes. It's also sometimes hard to convert value in your home to cash sometimes without paying someone, either a bank or something, to get access to it. I'm not saying it's a bad investment. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying if you put all your eggs in one basket, you get a problem. But if you're confident and you want to do these things and you have confidence in those companies and you want to speculate and do those things, then more power to you. It's just that it's difficult sometimes to get that value out of it, right? It's also difficult sometimes less. It sounds like they're actually doing something to create interest and stuff. It's also difficult to create interest income off those things too, right? Unless you're loaning it to somebody.
I
Whereas
mean, the barrier of entry is quite high.
it could be, absolutely. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars or more sometimes to do these things versus going to a pawn shop and buying gold if you want to. They're all big challenges. So it is a big deal. It is a big deal. All those things have to be weighed when you make those options. I'm not the person to say you can't do it, right? Or you shouldn't do it. Just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And the biggest thing about investing, by the way, also is most people, there's an old saying in Wall Street, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. You heard this saying? All right. Pigs get fat because they like and they consume and stuff, and they stop at one point, and hogs just keep consuming and doing things. You have to know what the exit is, right? You have to know what you're getting out of it. You're not just buying things for speculation. If you're buying a stock or do something, like, what's the purpose of this thing? At what point do I stop doing it, or do I buy more, or do I pivot to something else? It's an important exit. And I wasn't in the military, but all you guys in the military, you guys had exit plans, right? I mean, in the mission, you know you're getting out, right? You were going someplace that mission going out or a plan B. It's very similar in that aspect in terms of investing. You have to know what the purpose is. You buy a stock at $10. Well, I want to sell it at 15. Oh, got the 16. Do I keep it? Ooh, that's where the hogs get slaughtered. You have to have an exit in terms of that kind of different things, not just hold things because your neighbor bought it or something. Bitcoin's a perfect example. I don't know what it is now, but everyone thought it would be bust through like 150 this year. I think it's like an 80 or something.
What do you think of Bitcoin?
I have a moral issue with Bitcoin.
I have a moral issue with the dollar, and it's
No, you're absolutely no different. You're making a fantastic argument. A fantastic argument. I just know that at least in the dollar aspect of it, there's some value behind it. And as much as it's used for everything in the world.
It's not pegged to even a fraction.
Say again?
It was pegged to a fraction of a gold or whatever, but it just got worse, less and less and less. And nowadays through COVID, that's completely unpegged. It's just trust us.
So the question is faith in the dollar versus Bitcoin, and you're talking about the when it was pegged to the gold, right? If you look historically, and the issue is what is the dollar worth if it's not pegged to something? If you look up and you see during the time it was pegged to gold, look and see how often the value of the dollar actually went up and down. It went up and down crazy with every time there was a gold rush. All right? When the gold rush would happen, it would drop down.
It has to be planned. You have data on it. You can understand what's going on.
You can't have data on having someone haphazardly finding a mine of gold. It was uncontrollable, which is why I think Nixon, was it Nixon or
Yeah, well,
Truman?
Nixon also did that because he totally stiffed the French on all their colonies.
Economically, it actually made it more stable. If you look at the history of the dollar since then or prior to then, the dollar has actually been more stable. You can argue it's worth less. You can argue that there's more dollar being printed. You can argue that they're printing more dollars and different things. That's fine, but it's still the world currency, and it's the most stable currency, and more so after being pegged off the gold than it was before. It's just the truth of the matter. What happens beforehand or not, I couldn't tell you, but it is very much the most stable and valuable currency for a long time. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. With the advent of China and different things, who knows? But it goes back to your question earlier about whether or not you should be looking at different currencies. I don't know the answer, right? Plenty of people have money in the Swiss banks too, for that reason, right? But as of right now, it's your best bet. As of right now, in terms of growth and doing things and the world stage, it is the best place to put that money and have it grow and stuff like that. But going back to what you guys can control, if you want to go buy different currencies or different, no one's going to stop you. And no one's going to say you're completely crazy unless you put all your money into one thing. Okay. Most people in these stages of life, you guys are ages, I don't know how old you are, but if you're still working and you're about 10 years or more to retirement, you're still in a growth stage. And the argument in there is maybe you're not, maybe you're in an income stage, right? I think you're still working. You'll probably always still work. All right. You guys are both always, you guys are bad examples of retirement. But actually probably good examples. Oh yeah.
But to think about, well, what's it for?
I've seen so many businesses just fail because they held on for too long and had no way of exiting, no one to sell to, didn't know what to do, just didn't know what else to do. Most businesses end without any value because of that's one of the reasons. But they didn't have an exit. In our practice, what I do is I help businesses create these things and sell it. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the attendees is asking what can we do to minimize credit card debt?
That's a great question. So it depends on where you are in the stage, right? If ever, yeah.
No, but.
Well, it's nice you gotta take it alone and then zero it out.
Yeah, it's a challenge. So what ends up happening is credit card debt depends on where you are. If in the beginning stages and you're worried about getting there, then you have to cut back as much as possible. There's 0% options. Is there a chat feature on here? I didn't see it pop up.
Yes.
I didn't see it pop up, but yeah, so but that's fine. So if you're already in the debt and you have an issue, then what ends up happening is
Oh, it's because
yeah, it's fine.
this is up. You can't.
So the reality is the Jewish Federation of Broward and Miami, they actually have a free loan option. Go to their website. I think it's the Miami Jewish Federation. It's a Hebrew free loans, and I have a few people who do it also. Yeah, yeah.
They give it to anybody.
They give it to anybody, yeah. So there are some stipulations, right? If you're in debt, you need to have 2 co-signers, which is a challenge, right? And you have to submit to their credit counseling and budgeting, which actually is pretty decent. So what you can do is you can end up, let me go back to where I was. You can end up contacting them, and if you're in a different state, I don't know if everyone's in Florida, I'm sure similar things, but they will actually give you an interest-free loan. I do not know the repayment plan. It might be pretty steep. I think try to work with you, but 0% at any level is better than the 18 to 25 they're probably charging credit cards. So you can do that to get control of it, basically. And they do give you counseling and whatnot. If you're already in it and you're having an issue, then it's very challenging, right? You have to really cut back and make some serious decisions. If you're married, you have to then get the same page with your spouse and have a serious conversation about what you're doing. Then you go back to what I said earlier about, okay, maybe the answer is I have to make more money, which is always probably the answer, right? How do I do that? So it's a dual pronged attack, right? You have to work on the budgeting, you have to work on the expenses and the credit, and you have to work in development to make more money. The catch is as you make more money, which you will, everyone here will make more money next year, God willing, this year or the previous years. Okay. Is your lifestyle should not change accordingly. Right? If you're already in debt and you're already in debt and you're making a decent living, you make more money, most people don't change those habits, right? So the habits of spending less or making extra money and putting it away is what you have to create. And that's where you get the same page as your spouse, and the action is more important than anything else, right? So to answer the person's question, if you want to contact me, I think my contact info will be pushed out. You're happy to email me, we'll jump on a different call about specific questions. But The Hebrew free loan is actually a big deal. Help lots of people out.
I have
So,
a question.
yeah.
A couple of friends of mine were dealing with this outrageous credit card debt, and I think two of them just got one big loan or whatever.
Personal loan, yeah.
And then that was at a 4 or 5%. That was a lot less than the guys were charging. And then that's how they got at it.
It also, sometimes if you get so into debt sometimes and your credit's so bad, those personal loans won't give it to you. That's what I was saying, depending on where you are on the face, right? So if you're starting out, oh crap, I had an emergency, I had medical bills, now I owe money. Yeah, a personal loan. SoFi used to have them. Different companies used to offer them microloans. You can look at those and see, and they'll usually charge you less. Maybe it'll be 10 or 12 versus the 18. It's still a big improvement, and it helps you to control it. But you can't go back into debt. What happens, people consolidate, or ask the realtor, they take equity lines against their house, they pay all their credit card debt off. Oh, this is fantastic. And then a year later, they're back in the same situation. Now they owe what? Twice as much.
Yeah.
The HELOC plus the credit card, because they didn't fix the problem. The problem wasn't the debt, the problem was the habit. Right? And that's where the issue is. Right? So if someone used to come to my office or someone's kids or whatever, I would tell them not to take the HELOC because I know what would happen. You're better off getting the habit and paying more interest on the 18% and then doubling it. Even though it doubles in a couple of years, if you pay it down, you're still in a better situation because you took care of the habit you created that was bad. That's where the issue is.
Not a habit. Your expenses are just, there's no way to credit your expenses.
And then you gotta do the best you can and do the best you can to make more money. That's unfortunately the answer. The answer is, what kind of, am I paying? Am I getting paid enough? If I'm working for myself, what can I do to improve my business? I'm working for somebody else, they pay me fairly. Or can I ask for a raise? Or am I earned one? If I haven't earned one, right? What can I do to get one? Have a conversation with your employer, person you work for. Hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I need to make more money. What can I do? And based on that conversation, you can go into the marketplace and say, hey, what am I worth? If you're working at some place and if you're not looking for new opportunities to work and increase your income every 3 to 5 years, you are missing the boat. I'm not saying change jobs every 3 to 5 years, but if you're working someplace and most employers don't increase you consistently, unless you're working on commissions, it's a different story. Because listen, and most employers are good people. I'm hoping yours are good people. Some are bad, but most are good people, and they're just running their business, right? But the times that people have the biggest increases in pay is when? Anyone going to guess?
They change, well, that in Florida, I see people changing jobs every.
All the time. That's going to slow down, but yeah. So when you change jobs, and your income can increase 15, 20% in some situations by changing jobs, right? But the devil do you know, the whole saying, you want to have a conversation with your employer, what you're doing to make sure you're being paid accordingly, make sure you can grow, right? And if you're not, then you have to look for other opportunities. And it can be scary. But if you're not doing it, you're going to be stuck in that situation, especially if you have kids and you have tuitions and things you can't control. Okay, it can be a problem. It can be a problem, right? But you have to be looking at those things. Otherwise, you really are not growing and never going to succeed. And when you get there, by the way, you have to go by earlier comment. That money has to get spent on what? Paying debt down and then growing something for yourself, right? I saw a guy a little while ago. He works in a business and real estate and development, different things. And last year he had revenues of $1.6 million, right? Right, $1.6 million. So what ends up happening is the problem is that's $1 million. The problem is he needs $600,000 a year, right, to run his business. If you make $1 million and you tax it 40%, what are you left with? 600. So is he making any money? If he needs $600,000 to run his business, it's taxing the gross. Yeah, taxing the gross.
But you said it takes $600,000 to.
No. He needs $600,000 for his new deals. He makes $1 million. He pays 40% tax. And it took him like an hour to catch this. Because emotionally, he thought, $1 million. No, you didn't. You broke even, dude. I don't care what level you're at. You have to then readdress what the business is doing, what the goals are. So he has to make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million just to pay his bills, right?
the taxes. We didn't get what's going on with that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. He thought he made money, but after taxes, he broke even. Because he doesn't put it back into the business, he can't do it. Well, he's better off taking a job for 200 grand a year and talking 9 to 5 on some level, right? So those are the things. Everyone has the same issues, by the way. I got guys and they're making $1 million a year, spending $1.4 million. I don't care who you are, everyone has the same challenges, unless you're Jeff Bezos. His issue is testosterone. So that answer your question? But you have to address a couple things. The spending always has to get addressed. The habits always have to get addressed. But if it's not enough, you have to then look to see what can I do to make more. And those are the things. And if you want to talk, I'm happy to talk it through and stuff. Any questions from anyone on the line or no? Yakov? Okay. So the budget's a big deal, and in today's day and age, it's very hard, but if you can stick to it, you're doing great, right? Prioritize expenses. This is where you get your partner, just looking to see what's most important to you. You know, maybe you eat out too much, maybe you do this. In our business, we never tell people what to spend money on. Okay, if a change has to happen, then they have to go themselves and look at things and make changes. We just tell them how much they have to cut back, right? Let me see. Emergency fund, that's the 3 to 6 months we talked about before, right? Credit cards, again, this is paying things on time. There's some creative things you can do. The Hebrew Loan Society is a good thing. Let me see. Habits, using cards to make ends meet is a very challenging thing. Using lots of credit cards. Yeah. Everyone knows this stuff, but it's hard to put into practice because of current lifestyles, right? Then credit history. Back to your question earlier, if your credit's gone to crap, you can't get those loans. You can't buy a house. You can't rent an apartment sometimes, right? Because they do credit checks and stuff, but that's a very big challenging situation. Improving credit scores. Not for right now, but we can talk about it, right? Becoming an investor, right? Because everyone wants to know about these things. In our opinion, you don't put money in the market unless you have a minimum of 3 to 5 years to hold it. Why? Because then you at least have a couple of cycles of the market, right? If you look at the history of the market, no one's ever lost money in a 5-year segment. They didn't make much money, but no one's ever lost money. So if you need money for a specific thing, if I'm gonna have a down payment on a house in 2 years, you're not going to put it in the S&P, you're not going to buy Bitcoin, you're not going to buy gold, you're not going to put it in the S&P, you're going to put it in your bank account, right? You just need that money to be there at that time. If you have more than 5 years, then you have a situation, okay, now I can probably go through a cycle or two. Generally, the market goes down, it comes back in 12 to 18 months, generally speaking, back to at least where it was. If you don't have that time period, that's when you have cash. That's why IRAs and different things come into play, right? Let me see. Any questions on stocks and bonds and difference in mutual funds and stuff, ETFs? You guys familiar at all?
I talked to one of the finance bros in my life. And he pretty much gave me what he invested in. I much higher scale, right? But I was like, okay, I'm gonna spread out.
Yeah.
All this, all that, all ETFs.
Yeah, the cool thing now is, you go back 20 years ago, you couldn't buy partial shares. You had to have $500, $1,000 to buy a mutual fund. ETFs weren't even in existence at one point. So you guys have the real avenue to buy really, really cool stuff at very small entry points. The only thing I want to tell you to do is the two things is to have that 5-year outlook, right? We'll touch it for 5 years, and also have an exit. The exit's more important with a stock than it is with an ETF or mutual fund normally, because an ETF mutual fund are more diversified. Where a stock is you're buying an individual company. Unless you're buying Apple or Coca-Cola, you would hold it for 30 years. But if you're buying, BYD, the Chinese EV maker, I don't think they even traded on the U.S. stock exchange or not, but I don't know how you feel about that company. You have to have an exit for it. If you're going to buy diversified stuff like the S&P, the NASDAQ, those things generally can hold for longer because they're diversified. They're also ever changing, by the way. The 500 companies in the S&P weren't the same 500 companies a year ago or even 10 years ago or 30 years ago, right? It's just the largest 500 companies. And NASDAQ's the same situation. So they're diversified, they're constantly changing and hopefully doing well for you, right? But the exit's more important with stocks and Bitcoin. Things are more speculative that way.
An ETF, Where does it go in terms of risk factor in stocks, mutual funds and stuff?
They're so different. An ETF is very similar to mutual fund in makeup in terms of their a basket of stocks. The difference is an ETF is traded on a second basis. So what's that mean? If I have a client with an ETF, he calls me to trade it at noon, I can sell it then. If you have a mutual fund, they trade at the end of the day. So if you tell me to sell midday, I put a trade in. You have to wait until the end of the market cycle to sell at the end of the day. There's also a difference in taxation. But ETFs basically just the example is just it's the way it's treated in the market and it's the way it's treated tax wise. What's inside of it? They're all individual. They can be the same thing or completely different. You can have an ETF that's in the S&P 500, a mutual fund, the S&P 500, almost identical stuff. The difference is that ETF is traded intraday and mutual fund is not, right?
And the ETF is taxed on
The ETF, it's a little tax wise, but the ETF is taxed as you buy and sell it. The mutual fund has something called inherited tax gain. You may buy a mutual fund in a certain part of the year. You may lose money, but still get taxed into the year because at one point over the course of the year, they've made money and you inherited it because of the function of the mutual fund. Whereas an ETF, it's only your experience. Yeah.
Have you heard of TOF?
TOF? What's TOF?
There's a new, just IPO. They take the S&P 500, but it's Jewish based. So they take out all tobacco companies.
No, really?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Anything that's not whatever their vision of Tikkun Olam is.
That's interesting. It's a
Still invested huge in banks, military industrial complex stuff, which is great for the world.
yeah. I mean, I haven't heard of that, but that's pretty. It's a ticker, the ETF. That's very funny. That's very funny. That's the biggest difference in ETFs and mutual funds. They can have the same risk level and be almost identical. It's just how they're treated over the course of the stock day and the taxation at the end. ETFs are generally, people say they're less expensive, but not always. The expenses are also a big deal in mutual funds and ETFs and stuff. Whereas a stock, you don't have that expense.
And you can have them in IRAs.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can hold almost anything you want in IRAs nowadays. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know what bonds are? Bonds are loans. The municipality, the city, the state, the company is loaning you money. That's all it is. And there's a term they're going to pay you rate-wise. Those are good because sometimes they give you income. And also if the bank or the company go insolvent, they go out of business, then what's up happening is you're first in line to get repaid money. So, but they're a good source. They're a very important aspect. Up until recently, back to the inflation situation, the rates were very low. You didn't make any money for a while. Rates are high again now or higher, and you can make some money in bonds again. Most people at different ages when they're accumulating have very little bonds because they want the growth, but it's still a very important aspect of everyone's plan to look at least and see to gauge. Yeah.
But they give us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Total return, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The market's average, what, 8-10% last 50, 60 years, and bonds are maybe 4 to 6, 4 to 5, but they also come at different risk levels. And also the difference is that, they give you interest. The bond will pay you a coupon, a monthly, quarterly, annual interest rate that we receive. Not every stock does that. So
you recommend more the sovereign bonds or the banks or something?
So it's a good question. It depends. You get more sometimes you go international, but you get some risk to it, right? You get less risk and tax treatment. It really depends. In your situations of being young, you probably have very little bond experience, period. Probably want to go to intermediate short-term bonds in this environment, whether it's a bank or a different country or the US bonds, it's up to you guys. But it really should be something you should look into and educate yourself about mostly. When you're older and you're looking for income, and you're live off your money versus growing it, bonds play a big role because you have that consistency. When the market's down, bonds aren't supposed to go down in value, right? So what's that mean? So you buy a stock for $200 a share, they have a 2% dividend. You get $2 a share, right? That's a percentage of the value. So if the market goes down 20%, well, your dividend next year also got put 20%. In a bond, $100,000 and they pay you 2%, If the bond value goes down, guess what happens to the income you're receiving? Doesn't change. Doesn't change. You get the 2% as the initial investment. At the end of the term, whether it's a day, a month, 5 years, 30 years, you get the 100 grand back. But over the course of the time, you get income every single year. So the difference is that bonds are a good foundation somewhat, and they give you income for people, and it gives liquidity for investments. It also won't vary. Whereas in the stock, you have the volatility of the stock itself, and the dividend rate may change, right? So if you're looking to create income off something and income for retirement, and it's going to change every single year, you may not feel good about that. It may not be maybe a situation where you're not happy about that variability. So you plug bonds in to do that. Or you may put bonds in because, hey, I'm going to be really speculative over here, and I really can't add to the portfolio, but I want to have some liquidity to buy more stuff. I want to be consistent. I'll buy bonds, and that interest payment will be my reinvestment into my stocks. Those are the things people do sometimes to create income or liquidity and bring money into their portfolio, basically. All right? Make sense?
You said the bonds have different terms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, many of treasury bills are for 180 days, a week, 7 days, 10 years, 30 years. Recently, I think they're looking at a 50-year mortgage.
I saw that.
I saw 60, actually.
I don't know, they're crazy.
Why would 50-year mortgage not be a good thing?
When you're done here, Google an amortization rate
So I'm not.
on the interest payment, and how much interest you pay.
But if you pay more than your monthly payment and you take out a 50-year mortgage, you pay it off in 20 years. Or just taking a
That's
30-year mortgage,
that's
you
different.
pay-
That's different. Then they might as well get a 30-year mortgage.
You make extra payments on a 50-year mortgage versus on a 30-year mortgage. Don't you beat it out?
Not necessarily.
You can't shorten the.
You can. Depends on the interest rate.
15-year versus 30.
The idea was if you paid one extra mortgage payment a year, that's not including the taxes, but whatever the principal is, that it reduced your mortgage 7 years.
Yeah.
About 50 years, you're gonna reduce it. What?
It depends on the interest rate. I can take a mortgage out to 100 years, but if the interest rate's higher, that your battle's for naught. Right? If it's the same 5%, the payment, the time is the time, it's easy. But the interest rate's higher or lower, a different story. But most people, by the way, I'll share that most people don't do it for the bad habits. Right? And mortgage companies caught on to it and they stopped doing it. It used to be some mortgage companies used
Twice a month.
some mortgage companies used to have this thing where they didn't figure it out, but if you paid,
Yes.
half the first and the 15th, they actually counted it. The way they accounted for it was interesting, where they would apply it a certain way. It would take off 5 years, it wouldn't cost you any more money. The banks realized, oh crap, we're losing money in doing that. Right? But the first 15 years of your mortgage, nearly 80% of your payment is interest.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what ends up happening. So, okay, we lost everyone on Zoom. So, okay. Okay. So we can stop this then on Zoom. So actually, Vivo, you're still on actually, sorry. So I met everyone else. Okay. Any questions, guys? I wanted it to be more interactive. There's a couple you hear, but hopefully you'll get more traction in the future. But any questions? Any takeaways? Any things that
From a tax perspective, in terms of investments, what do you think is the best use, like which way is it better to get stocks that have dividends and the dividends are reinvested? But
I don't let the tax tail wag the dog. I mean, if you're working and you have a significant income or at least a decent income, then generally speaking, you want your portfolio to be more tax efficient. But on some level, paying taxes is your way of saying congratulations, you made money. Now, you want to have growth and stuff like that. Yeah.
They don't pay tax.
Yeah. So on some level, what you want to do is be as tax efficient as possible, but you have to go back to your risk tolerance and your time frame we're looking to achieve. If you're going to be working till forever, then guess what? You can be in a very tax efficient portfolio, not care about any income, and buy and hold forever, and never be taxed or tax very little on it. And you're in a great situation. But not everyone has that risk tolerance sometimes. Those stocks generally are more growth oriented. and they tend to have more variability. Whereas stocks that pay dividends and have interest and are taxable tend to have less of a ride. So, but you pay more tax at the end of it.
Have that diversity.
Not necessarily. You can be in a portfolio of sold dividend paying stocks. You can just go out there and buy and find. I think Verizon's paying a 5 or 4% dividend or something crazy like that. You know, and you can just buy Verizon if you want to, but you're in one telecommunication company now. You know, or you can go out and just buy Amazon that I think pays nothing. That's just growth oriented. Will be tax efficient, but only be in one situation. Or be in a portfolio that's more growth oriented, that pays no dividends and interest and pay no tax unless you sell something. You know, it all goes back to everyone's specific situation,
So,
you know?
I have all of my stocks and stuff all set to automatic invest dividends.
That's great,
I'm
yeah.
not looking at it, I'm not touching it, I'm not.
Yeah.
Based on what you said earlier about bonds, why wouldn't you or someone, even when they're starting out, at least get one or two, like low paying, but eventually you're gonna be ahead.
So it's one example, right? So I give the example I gave was if someone didn't have the ability to add to it and different things, right? Up until recently, you couldn't get much yield on bonds. You're getting much less in dividends on your stocks. So it made no sense. Some people like the comfort of having that you know that stability in their portfolio. Everyone is a little bit different. The answer is you can. You absolutely can. But you have to weigh that past the growth of your investment or having it into something else. Right? If that
So it might not be as secure, but it might make more, so.
I'm confident over the next 10, 15, 50 years of your life, you'll make more money in stocks and bonds. But if you want liquidity and interest, consistent interest income, then bonds can be a very good option.
I had a client, he invested, all his money went into bonds, like more than $1 million. But he was very risk adverse.
Yeah.
And he loved bonds. He would never even think about the stock market. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone dropped off except for me though. So yeah. So
It's also about your risk tolerance, like what.
yeah, I said risk tolerance, I kind of bit my tongue afterwards. Risk tolerance is important. It's really important.
But if it suits, you have money too.
Somewhat, yeah. You have to look at your specific situation. Okay, everyone knows nothing risk, nothing venture, nothing gain situation. You have to be able to put money in places which can grow. Right? What you have to first figure out is how much can I put away, where can I put it, and then you talk about risk tolerance. Right? You can't put the cart before the horse. You can't talk about just stocks and stuff. Okay, if you don't have, I remember I was at a talk one time and then we were talking and I asked the guy, he was asking all these questions about all these different things. At the end, when we're all finished up, I asked, we were talking, he had no money. You know, he said he never put any money in the market. He was always afraid to, or he had very little money and stuff. And I said, well, you need to start creating some habits. Why asking all these questions? You just now paralysis by analysis. Just do it already. He couldn't bring himself to do it because he kept thinking of every possible option. No, that's just silly. Okay, I don't care who you listen to on some level, right? It's me or somebody else. I want to do the same basic stuff. Okay, and any nutritionist or any tax person will tell you the same thing. There's no basic things. Like I mentioned before, I joked about calling your mom. Okay, these are the things you just do, right? You call your grandmother, you call your parents, you call your sister, you call your brother, you tell them you love them. Those are things you just do in your life. You try to spend less than you make. You do your best to put 10% away every single year. Okay.
The
All right.
3 to 6 rule.
That 3 to 6 rule. Okay. And you grow professionally. Right? That's it. That's it. And 7 hours of sleep. But the idea, if you do those things and you're so far ahead of the game, then you can start really asking the really interesting questions about what to do with certain money. Then you get in a situation where you have real options. Right now, those are the only options. You put in the SPY index fund, that's a fine place to be if you do it consistently, right? Just do those things consistently and build that. Then you have all the options in the world. Nothing will be against you at that point. Maybe you can't buy a $10 million building, but you can sure as hell and survive and retire and have a good life and do different things your entire life or have very little stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. What was that?
I said, call Tom, she'll get you the $10 million, she'll find one.
The house, she doesn't do commercial.
To commercial.
I didn't know that. Well, never you knew. But yeah, those are the basic things. And you can get some really cool stuff. And now is the time to do it because you couldn't do this. You couldn't do this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You know, the stock market was for a finite set of people. It's amazing what you can accomplish nowadays. You know, Robinhood pioneered partial shares. That's just new, man. It just happened the last handful of years.
I wouldn't personally go on that route.
I'm not saying the ability to access. I'm not saying Robinhood. I'm saying, but before Robinhood, you couldn't buy partial shares. If you wanted to buy Amazon, what's Amazon?
Trading wasn't a thing either.
When I was in college, it was a big deal that $8 trades came out. I finished college in 2000. Before that, a trade was $100. It was a couple $100. Think about that for a second. You wanted to buy a penny stock, they pay $150 for somebody to buy a penny stock. You wanted to buy a Coca-Cola, buy one share of Coca-Cola, it'd be $100 to somebody. The barrier entry was huge. Now it's so low.
But Robinhood pioneered all of that.
Pioneered partial shares.
They also froze.
They also did the.
They also froze trading like institutional investors were.
Yeah, they did a good little bet also.
They did a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, all you don't have to show more than that to just show that you have a fundamental issue with your system.
Well, the difference was technology. Technology was the issue.
Well, I'm saying
No, I mean, but forget Robinhood for a second. Everything we're talking about was a technology thing.
Okay.
You know, they ever heard of a ticker tape? What a ticker tape is?
Ticker like for the stuff.
Where do you think it came from? The ticker tape. People would sit in, you know, I can Google it. Let me share. Something funny? You can stop sharing here. This is how stocks were traded in the 20s.
People at the time, 40, they couldn't take it and fit.
What's going on here? What is it used for? The ticker tape was literally a glass bowl, and they would send almost like Morse code, and the tape would be fed out, and a bunch of fat guys with cigars would look at it and watch what the stock did. The thing you see now is just a modern version of that ticker tape that was broadcasted. And if you were in New York, you got one. If you got in Chicago, I got it later in California. So depending on where you lived, that's why there's different exchanges in Chicago and San Francisco, right? Depending on where you lived, you had different stock prices, right? But what happened to Bankman-Fried? What did he figure out? I mean, the whole situation with
that if you can launder money by using institutional investors.
That's one way he did it. But he started out his business because he realized that he could trade cryptocurrency on different exchanges, different pricing. He found out that there wasn't it was
mostly
initially it became fraud, but initially he figured out that if I bought Bitcoin here for $1, I can sell it here for $1.20 just because they're different exchanges.
I mean that's
Like to start them on.
As long as everything else in your life is taken care of, you can invest for somebody else. I'm a big believer in the whole thing about the airlines. When the air comes down, you put on yourself first, you put a second, get next. If you're okay financially and you can do for other people, God bless you. If you haven't taken care of those things first, and all that that goes back to your question, right? Prioritization in terms of stuff, but then you have to be able to make sure you take care of yourselves.
But to my industry, they talk about buying life insurance policies.
Yeah, we do all the time.
Because just like it's a stable, somebody else can fund it, and that's, solid money that.
We do it all the time.
There's insurability and things.
We do it all the time.
We do that.
Yeah. You know, we do like a high situation where someone puts in $300 a year for their kid. I've always my kid. Life insurance policy. There's two things. It has some growth, it guarantees insurance. There's also an option on there where is a guaranteed $1 million in insurance regardless of his health. Like life insurance.
Life insurance, down to insurability.
Exactly right. I thought you were